Greetings! On behalf of YTM, welcome aboard. Enjoy your flight.
If you love to travel and want to stay in the loop with all the latest tips, reviews, and updates, be sure to hit that subscribe button and don't forget to like and share. We do appreciate the support. Join us on our flight today as we'll be going from Palermo, Sicily to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. We'll be flying Air France's HOP Embraer 190 in business class, the bulkhead seat. Now our original booking said we were flying on an Embraer 170, and I'm pretty positive this is the Embraer 190, and I'm quite certain somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. Now this will be a quick 2-hour and 40-minute flight from Palermo, Sicily. Now, if you've never been to Sicily or just have a passion for visiting Italy, check out our series on Discovering Italy, where we show you some of the best sites and give you some insider tips on visiting some of our favorite cities. Now, as Sicily is a little less traveled, we're going to dive deeper into this island and show you some of our favorite places and a few hidden gems in one of our most treasured destinations to travel and experience, Sicily. Now let's look at our booking for this flight. This booking encompassed 2 flights, from Palermo to Paris, and then from Paris to New York, with a layover in Charles de Gaulle. We booked this Air France flight through Virgin Atlantic using points, of course. And as we already had some points with Virgin, we just had to transfer 90,000 points to get the 117,000 needed for 2 one-way business class tickets, and the $729+ for the taxes and fees. Now let's take a quick look at the Air France baggage allowance. First, let's take a look at carry-on, where in business you get 2 carry-on bags as opposed to 1 in economy class. And in business class, you also receive a 6-kilogram bump in weight between your personal item and carry-on bag. Now, if you're not quite sure of your baggage allowance on your flight, it's always best to check your ticket or contact the airline, as there's quite a few factors that can vary your baggage allowance, so it's always good to check. Now let's take a look at our Air France checked bag allowance. Depending on which type of business class ticket you purchased, you get 1 or 2 checked bags. We had 2, and other factors that come into play with your checked bag allowance is your status with SkyTeam or Flying Blue. Now, some people have asked us how strict is Air France with their baggage policy. For checked bags, generally they are weighed. For us, they have never weighed, measured, or questioned our personal or carry-on items, but your mileage may vary. Now let's look at getting to the airport. Your least expensive ways, of course, are the bus and train. Now, the bus might be a little more convenient depending where you're coming from in the city. They also have Uber Black, which is more luxury as well as a little more expensive than the regular Uber, but it's convenient and reliable. For us, we just asked our Airbnb host, who had a friend who drove us to the airport at a really good price, as well as some interesting conversation along the way. Now let's talk a little bit about our check-in process with Air France at Palermo Airport. And since we were flying business class, we were able to go to the Sky Priority Lane. And it was very nice of Air France to send us this little itinerary to follow, which we did. Now, when we arrived at the airport, it was a little crowded, not too bad. And there were only 2 people ahead of us in the Sky Priority Lane, which made me happy. From there, it went a little downhill, because apparently the couple in front of us were over the weight and baggage allowance, which they didn't seem too happy with. And I also believe they had an issue with their credit card, so after about 20 minutes of waiting, the nice woman working the economy line let us cut in. We were happy, but the people on the economy line, not so much. But then things got worse. As I received my boarding pass, I saw the dreaded quadruple S, and if you don't know what that means, you're lucky. And those who do know it means extra security, which I realized when I was unable to check in online, and I've been through it a couple of times. It's just an extra annoyance, which I'd have to deal with on my flight from Paris to New York. Anyway, after the waiting to check in and the quadruple S on my boarding pass, all I wanted to do was go to the lounge, relax, and have a drink. But unfortunately, at this airport, there were no priority pass lounges or lounges for Air France business class passengers. So we had to spend our time before our flight relaxing at the gate, which was fine. The wait wasn't too long. Now let's take a look at our boarding for this Air France flight to Paris. And after checking in, going through security and passport control, we checked the big board. Hey, it looks like our flight is on time and leaving at a gate B2. So we headed down to the gate, and it wasn't too crowded down there. Now, Air France has a pretty typical boarding process. We were in Group 1 as we were flying in business class. Group 2 is usually passengers with some sort of status with the airline or alliance, followed by Groups 3, 4, and 5. And we didn't have an actual gate, so that meant we were traveling by... That's right, bus. But it didn't really bother us too much, as it was a beautiful day in Palermo. Everything was organized fairly well, and we really didn't have to wait that long for the bus to arrive. Once on the bus, I figured it'd be a nice quick ride to the plane, and we're off. And getting further and further away from the terminal. Now, we drove for a little while. At one point, I wasn't sure if we were driving all the way to Paris, or maybe even back to New York. Actually, the ride wasn't that long, and we finally arrived at our plane, and everybody seemed to take a nice leisurely walk to the plane, as I'm not sure everybody was quite ready to leave Sicily. And as we were boarding from the front of the plane, we really didn't have a long walk to get to our seats. Now let's take a look at our Air France hop seats. Most short-haul business class flights within Europe are usually just like economy seats, except the seat next to you might be blocked off. As we look at our plane here, in business class, the seat next to you is not blocked off. Business class here just means you're at the front of the plane and you have a little extra legroom. Our plane is in a 2x2 configuration with 100 seats, and yes, they do skip row 13. Now let's take a look at our seats, seats 1D and 1F. Generally, sitting in business class in these short-haul European flights doesn't really mean much to me, except if you're sitting in the bulkhead seat. And all that space does make a difference. And from what I understand, they'll be releasing new seats for this plane with more rows, more tech savvy, and I believe the seat next to you will be blocked off in business class. But personally, I think I prefer comfort to tech on these short-haul flights, but we will reserve judgment until we experience them ourselves. Now you can identify the business class seats on this flight by the red on the headrest, where the economy seats are red and white. And I think another clue might just be the word business inscribed on the headrest. Now, as we continue the seat tour, you have your recline button, your overhead light and vents, and sitting in the bulkhead seat, you have your tray table hidden in the armrest, and it's pretty easy to maneuver in and out. And the tray table in the bulkhead seat is pretty big, and a cup holder as well. You also have a decent amount of storage in the bins above your seat. Now, since you're in the bulkhead seat, you don't have a seat back pocket, you have these bins for storage. Now, I know some people don't like the bulkhead seats as your carry-on or personal item isn't easily accessible, as you can't store any of your bags on the floor in front of you, which doesn't really bother us much. We just take what we need, and if there's anything else we happen to need, we could just grab it from the bins above. We only had 2 items stored in front of us, an air sickness bag and a safety card. You also have a nice size window on this plane. Now, it wasn't the window that caught our attention today, it was that incredible Palermo view, which makes waiting for takeoff a little more tolerable. And out of the left side of the plane, you also get a beautiful view of the Tyrrhenian Sea. And let's not forget about the best part of the bulkhead seat, all that space. And Lily gives us a little demo as she could extend her feet all the way out in this space. Now, it was a little chilly on the plane, so Lily had asked the flight attendant for a blanket. She said they did not carry blankets on this flight, but she returned a few minutes later and said she had found one in the back of the closet. That was nice, and we really do appreciate that level of service. Now let's take a look at the plane's IFE and Wi-Fi. There was none, which didn't bother us as we really didn't need them on such a short flight. Since I was just relaxing and taking a few photos for this video, I hadn't noticed that we missed our takeoff window and the door was still open on the plane. This made me a little concerned, but fortunately the captain made an announcement that we were just waiting for some late arriving luggage to be boarded. He said it wouldn't be that long. And about 30 minutes later, that luggage finally arrived and we were ready to take off. Then they proceeded to close the cabin door, and then came the ceremonial closing of the curtains between the classes. Then the seatbelt light came on, which meant we're ready to go.
We will shortly be departing. Please take your seat, fasten and adjust your seatbelt. Our friends and skating partners wish you a very good flight.
Now sit back and relax and watch some of our takeoff, if you're interested. If not, forward ahead about 60 seconds. It might be just those little things, but I really do appreciate a beautiful window view on takeoff. So long, Sicily. Until next time. Now let's talk about the food and drink on this flight. It's a short flight, so I wasn't expecting too much. Maybe a welcome drink and a small meal. And as it turned out, we were pleasantly surprised. They started us off with a small bottle of water and a refreshing wet towel. And this being Air France, of course, we had to sample the wine. So Lily started out with a nice Merlot. And Lily knows her wine, and she said this one was delicious. And shortly after we reached altitude, we received our menu card in French. Oh, flip it over in English. And I really hope this food tastes as good as it sounds. And as the food arrived, it really looked good. It tasted even better. Now, let's break down the entire meal. Our main dish was excellent. It had a wonderful combination of flavors, and it was a large enough portion, which I like. Next up on the plate, we had some cheese, of course, and we had some sort of bagel donut thing. It was more of a dessert than a bagel, and it was quite tasty. Oh, let's not forget the bread, and I thought it paired quite nicely with the cheese, while Lily went with the butter option, and she said this is one of the purest butters she's ever tasted, which is impressive. They also provided you this nice set of cutlery, along with a little salt and pepper in this fancy little box. And of course, we had to pair this meal with a delightful French wine, and I believe we chose wisely. At this point, I thought a toast was in order for an excellent meal, wonderful company, and a safe flight. Thank you, Air France. Now I think we should take a little look at the bathrooms on this plane. There are 2 bathrooms on this plane, one located in the front, the one that we used, and another one located in the rear of the plane. Now, these bathrooms are small, but what I expected, and all I'm really looking for in a bathroom on this Embraer 190 is that it's clean, it's functioning, and it's fully stocked. And this bathroom checked all those boxes, so we're good to go. Since we didn't have an IFE and I didn't have Wi-Fi, I was just enjoying the view out the window for the remainder of my flight. And soon enough, we heard the announcement that we were preparing to land. And even though we departed about 45 minutes late, we only arrived 15 minutes late, which wasn't really an issue, as we still had just under 5 hours to make our connection. Now, Charles de Gaulle Airport is not one of my favorites. It's rather large, and in my opinion, it has sort of a complex layout. The signage isn't always the best, and it can be a little confusing when you need to transfer. So it was time to exit the plane, and guess what? No gate. This is starting to be a trend with us, so bus to the terminal, it is. Well, since we had a connecting flight, once we got to the terminal, we had to hop on the shuttle train to transfer to the terminal we were departing from. The shuttle train is pretty simple and easy to navigate. And since we had a little under 4 hours before our next flight, and by flying in business class, we had access to Air France's Salon Lounge. Here we are at the entrance of the Air France Lounge, Terminal 2E, Hall L, I think. It's very confusing here. We took the elevator up. We have a little story about that later. As we entered the lounge, we noticed it had a interesting modern design with a nice open feel to it. And of course, they had a variety of food and beverages to choose from today. And this lounge did offer a nice selection of amenities and services as well. But I'm not sure if this lounge really met our expectations, but we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more in our full review of this Air France lounge, as well as how we ended up getting stuck and out of this elevator while leaving the lounge. Now some final thoughts on the Air France Embraer 190. Overall, we really enjoyed this flight, even though it started off a little shaky with the wait at check-in and the extra security. But the service was really good, the food was excellent, and the seats were really comfortable, considering we had the bulkhead seat. As we did enjoy this flight, our connecting flight on Air France's 777 to New York was a little different than we expected, but you can hear all about that in our full review of that flight. I hope this helps you the next time you fly Air France. Safe travels. If you enjoy traveling and like our videos, please subscribe, share, and like. We really do appreciate it, as it does help support the channel.